Hello, hello world. Hello and happy Friday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for being here at Coded Live. I'm your host, Sam Basu, and with me, I have my very good friend, Joe Mello. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you, Sam?
Hanging in there. Is it Friday? It is Friday,
It
right?
it is Friday. Let's not forget.
Yeah, it is Friday. So, this is the chat show where we have one rule. We don't share screens. We consciously take the time to talk to people because we're all living through weird times. And yeah, we are missing out on the in person conversations, the hallway tracks, just sitting down with somebody with a cup of coffee and just talking about life in general and whatever else that excites us and we're passionate about. So I'm actually super excited to have Joe on. I've known you for years. And before I start, yeah, we are looking okay on stream. Chat room is getting filled up. Mohi Jolly, hi there. Good to see you. So this is the chat show, and we love talking to passionate people, and Joe for sure is passionate. So, Joe, tell us about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Joe Mello. As Sam said, I've known Sam for a while here. Been working as part of Progress Telerik. I like Sam and what we like to call an old Telerik head. So I've been with Progress as part of Telerik since before Progress acquired Telerik a long, long time ago. I work here to oversee our financial services and banking relationships and our customer success in that space. And I've been in that role for a while. So, as Sam said, when you do something for this long, you're certainly passionate about it. And it's a great spot for me because it combines two things I consider myself very passionate about: working with people on a daily basis, and then technology. And technology is, I'd say, a passion, not necessarily the strongest of skills. So it's nice to kind of have that in between role of getting to do both.
Yeah, awesome, and you are excellent at what you do, and we like talking to like every type of developer in the community, but also some of us sometimes forget like the software industry, like we are all kind of cogs in a big wheel. Like it takes a lot to run software as a company and sell software and build software. So there are so many aspects of making this like the putting work, right? There are developers, there are engineers, there are designers, there are marketing people, there are salespeople. We all work together to make this thing work. So it's good to have you on. So where do you live, and do you enjoy where you are? Any complaints?
We're getting into the enjoyment period because I live in Boston, as we can see. Diehard New England Boston person. Obviously, we have Progress has some headquarters here, and I say just getting into the love. I joke, I love Boston year round. I'm not going to say I love the snow, but I don't hate the snow like some others. But we're getting into the Boston time period here. It was a bit chilly yesterday. I think our lowest temperature yesterday. We're already beating that today, but we're getting into the most beautiful time in Boston, in my own personal opinion. I have a roommate that lives with me. He's from Philadelphia. He is now a Bostonian transplant. But what he likes to say, and I've stole this from him, as much as we both love to travel, we don't travel for 3 months out of the year because there is not a more beautiful place in the world than Boston for 3 months out of the year: June, July, August. Anybody out there that's ever thinking of coming to Boston, come whenever you can. But if you can plan around June, July, or August, I highly suggest it.
Yeah, I love Boston as well. We actually got, I'm in Northwest Pennsylvania. We actually got some snow last night. Well, yesterday night, about 2 inches. Thankfully, like we didn't have anything planted that will like die, but it was weird getting snow this late. Yeah, and you don't mind the snow, do you?
No, I'm not going to say I love it, but I don't mind it. I've learned to deal with it. I've learned to live with it. I don't think I would go much further north other than a vacation and into more snow, but I don't feel the need like a lot of people sometimes do to
Yeah,
get away from it.
yeah,
It can be a nice change of pace, and it's
yeah.
beautiful before it gets touched.
That's true. That is true. Just looking at your hat, it reminds me like a few months back. I was talking to somebody from Boston, right, and talking of NFL and American football. I just like instinctively asked them like, how does it feel to be back in the Super Bowl? I felt so bad because, like, I mean, it's just been like so long that it's hard to separate Brady from the
Some
Boston
Boston people
gang.
would probably instinctively answer that question.
Yeah, yeah. So, for context, folks, Tom Brady moved on after how many years in Boston? Probably 10,
20,
20
20
years.
years.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So for a lot of people here, it would be instinctual to answer that because I mean, at my age, and I'm 32. For most of my formative memory years of football up here, Tom Brady was the Patriots. So for a
Yeah,
lot of people in
yeah,
that lower age demographic, they didn't know the Patriots without him.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit more about like what you do, and like do you have a hard time explaining what you do to folks who are not technical or anybody else?
I would say sometimes I have a hard time explaining what we do a lot as a company, not necessarily what I do. Customer success and of course the sales aspect of my job kind of goes linear. So, even when you're talking to a child, they understand selling things. When you talk about UI development specifically, to somebody that hasn't worked with UI development, I do think that gets lost a little bit. The number one thought is, oh, you work with software. And it's kind of like my go-to to explain to somebody what we do here at Telerik that might not have a technical background is I like to utilize the thought of Legos and say, no, 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 we
Mhm.
don't really provide software. We provide Legos that people build beautiful software with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I break it down. But yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say the thought of UI development can definitely be challenging to understand for somebody that hasn't used it, hasn't been involved in it before, and just uses an app normally and hasn't seen one being built before.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I haven't considered that. Like we build the Lego blocks, so you can go build other amazing stuff with it. That's a good
Yeah.
way.
And you can
Yeah,
build it however you want. We might have had a vision of
sure.
how those blocks fit together, but you might have a different vision. Doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, like you do this now, but like, how did you start your career? Like, is this what you always wanted to do?
So it actually wasn't, to be honest. And if I'm being completely transparent, I thought, customer success and um, customer and sales organizations was something that I wasn't going to be interested in. It was kind of a temporary stepping stone for me while I started many years ago. I actually was uh, in between graduation and grad school. I was planning to go to grad school for higher education, actually. In college, I was super involved. I was in a fraternity. I was student body president. So I did a lot of things on my campus. And I really, like I said, I have a passion for people. So I drew an affinity for doing my best to help other college students and then wanted to continue to do that when I graduated. Um, I did change majors in college. So I was in undergrad for 5 years and decided I wanted to take a small break just before going to grad school. In that time, obviously needed a job. I had a friend here at Telerik at the time that referred me, and I started working here and instantly fell in love with it. And the main reason, exactly what you said at the start, Sam, passion. I had the people passion, and I think the big thing for me with development tools is working with people that are trying to solve problems daily. Working directly with developers, working with people involved in the development lifecycle. We're not talking about 50,000-foot problems. We're talking about 10-foot problems that are affecting people daily, which I love. And then on the flip side, what can be a difficult part of my job for a lot of folks in it, I find it easy because of that passion. The following the technology, the understanding of the technology. I, of course, myself am not a developer. Maybe one day I'll have development skills, but I am and always have been passionate about technology. I have an older brother, or had, he passed away, but I have an older brother who was about 10 years older than me. And growing up, he was a techie geek. So, when you could first have a computer in your house when I was 6 years old, kind of affordably, we had one. We had AOL before there was AOL 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. So I had an early disposition to technology and it always interested me. So even if I'm not working directly with it, the ability to continue to desire to learn more, stay up to date with our products, the market, the UI space, and really innovation in general. I mean, we do some work here with AR, VR, and that's super interesting to me and something I follow closely. So the innovation of technology that I get to peer into here helps me to stay so engaged and so involved in what some people would consider the harder part of the job,
Hmm.
learning the technology.
Yeah, no, no, well said, well said. And I mean, despite being like a hardcore tech company, like you said it well, like, I mean, it's all about people. Like we work with humans to build the software that we do. So yeah, your people skills really, really help, and you're awesome at what you do. So
I appreciate
thank
that.
you.
Thanks, Sam.
What was your first computer? Very first one?
My first computer was, I don't know if I can remember the first one we had in the house, but the first one I remember was a Gateway, actually. So it
What
probably,
OS?
oh, we were Windows
95?
90, 95. Yeah, I believe 95. Yes. I'm looking at my desk right now, and at that time we didn't have towers; they laid flat. But the CPU would take up probably the entirety of this desk.
Yeah, yeah, I remember those days. Let's see. Uh, Tracy Mail, who's Joe? Joe is awesome. Joe is Joe Mello, and Joe works with us and at Progress Software, and he does, I don't know, a lot of different things. You wear a lot of different hats, selling things, guiding our product teams. Yeah, you're involved in like the roadmap discussions. You are involved in making customers successful. I don't envy what you do. It's a lot of different things to juggle. So like, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So like you, like every customer that we work with ends up being an account, right? And we have small accounts, we have big accounts. How many do you juggle at any given time?
So I juggle a bunch. I juggle a couple of 100 accounts with a support team under
Wow.
me. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a team. We give those accounts a lot of dedicated attention. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason it's so large is with what we consider sort of the enterprise success team here. We segment things by verticals. Obviously, in the UI space, we hope all of our customers use all 70 to 120 components in the libraries we provide them. But what you find is, while everybody in every vertical everywhere wants and needs a grid, after that, some of the use cases, some of the niche functionalities and components used in the libraries start to get industry specific, or at least the volume of usage of them. So you can definitely do a better job aggregating some of the thoughts and feedback of our key customers when you're working within a vertical. So with that said, I cover anything that we consider enterprise in our financial services and banking vertical. So that gives my breadth of
Mm-hmm.
relationships some depth, because again, nobody can use a grid like a financial services company, and everybody loves to not reinvent grids. So
Sure.
while all my customers love all of our components, it starts and ends with the grid, and that's what keeps me busy and keeps me going. So
Yeah.
it's a good problem to have a lot of customers to make sure we're
Yeah.
taking care of and supporting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So maybe speaking of customers, like, and tell us what you like really enjoy, and then what are some like the really difficult and tricky parts. Because I'm sure, like, when you talk about enterprise development, like things get like you go down a rabbit hole quickly, right? So do you end up like getting on calls with other customers and their developers, like for like really long, detailed calls, and you're like, just let me out of this, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like we talked about before, with my passion and love of technology and our technology, and the time in which I've been working with the same technology, I do consider myself a bit more technical than maybe a lot of the other customer success type people some of these development folks might be working with. So I kind of tend myself down the rabbit hole sometimes because I can answer some things or get into some technical conversations. So it's a lot of making sure, with the customer always being my first priority and purpose, that I'm not afraid to, once we do start going somewhere, say, hey, this is something that's a little bit out of my waters, but I'm going to bother Sam because it's usually not that it is. So it's all about, knowing what your knowledge is, being confident in it, and not trying to really be bigger than your britches for a customer. We're here to support them and make sure we get them the right information that's the most beneficial to them. So if I don't know that, that's okay. I can help them to find it.
No, and I think you're being very humble. Like you think like a developer, and you're super technical. You know your stuff inside out. But to your point, like sometimes like that's the time investment, right? When we sit down with somebody who's having an issue, right, and you get them to be successful. Maybe it takes an hour, but you win a heart, and you win somebody who can champion for you.
Yep, especially in this developer tooling space, the best way to proliferate and expand developer tooling in a relationship is word of mouth in that relationship. And the best way to ensure word of mouth is to ensure successful, happy developers using our components. So you asked what one of my favorite parts of the job is. Unfortunately, it's what's been most affected besides the office from COVID, but I do get to travel usually a bit, whether it's me and Sam have been to conferences together, or more importantly, visits to my existing and ongoing customers to ensure that success. And that's probably my favorite part of the job for two reasons. One, of course, being a people person, I love the face-to-face interaction. I love getting to take some customers out to dinner and just get to know them more on a personal level outside of what do you like to code in. But even further, a lot of times when we do that, since we are going to see existing customers and ensure their success, it gives me an opportunity to sometimes get to see what they've built with our components, which is super rewarding and super, again, for a person that's, not necessarily developing with them often and seeing all the different links we can take them to, or have my own ideas kind of fostering in my head to see what other people do when they implement our components and the links they take them to, and some of the, in the financial space, again, some of the massive trading applications that get built with our components. It's just very rewarding to see some of the actual output. There's a lot of line of business applications that get developed in the financial services space, and you don't always get to see those because they're internal. So actually getting the view is very, very rewarding.
Yeah. So like, speaking of that, so in your years, like, anything you have seen that is like, that's been built that's like super crazy or funny or scary? Any stories you got?
I wouldn't say anything super funny or crazy, to be honest. I've seen lots of great things. Really, I think, for the most part of it, it comes down in my space to some of the trading applications that we've seen built for a lot of the big banks. Some people might use these daily, not the day trader types, but whether it's an E-Trade. And while I've seen some complex sites being built with our components, again, it usually comes down to the grid, but seeing what can be done in a real-time trading application from scratch with our components. And it's funny because a lot of times when I'm working with some of our own engineers, some of the use cases that are brought to me by some financial institutions are, I don't think we need that. I don't think anybody needs to consume all that data at once. And it's, well, you never sat with a day trader. So it's, whether it's a million rows loading at once, nobody's consuming a million rows, but they're sorting by change. And that change loading in a millisecond costs hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes.
That's true.
Seeing, the mission critical trading applications, and I've seen a few in my travels that have just been built. And, I think what strikes me most about them is, given the criticalness of these applications and the heaviness, in usual cases, they're heavy desktop clients. So we see them in WinForms or WPF, and just knowing that they were built, for some of them 7, 8, 9 years ago in those desktop technologies and have been updated but maintained without major work is not only cool to see, but also, of course, a feather in our cap as well of you don't, in a business critical application, you can't bring it down to rewrite it often. So making sure you have that future proof maintainability is so clutch. And that's kind of what's taken me back most in some of the applications I've personally seen.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I mean, it's always like encouraging, and in a way, like, you're in awe when you see what people are building with our stuff, and how mission critical some of those things are. And and developers, like, with our tools, like, we can shoot ourselves in the foot, and we do often. And sometimes you might question, like, is that really needed for you, for your application? And some of it is. But I've seen some crazy things with grids done as well, like people putting like grids inside of grids and just like a ton of data. And at some point, performance is going to take a hit when you do such crazy things. And that's why, like, we keep on working. So we are trying to get out of the way as much as possible and let you build your apps.
That's a great call out. A lot of people love our ability to nest components within the grid. And I can't think off the top of my head, but I have seen some interesting components nested within a grid just to try to understand the use cases. And, you get a checkbox or something, and that's a common use case within a grid. or drop downs, but just some scheduler components nested in a grid and things like that. And it's, I'm sure the users that use these have requested it and have reasons for it, but sometimes I think about it, I'm like, how do you use that?
Yeah, sometimes the UX just need to be just kind of rethought out. Like, is this really how you want it? So, yeah. So like you deal with like a large portfolio of products, right? Like across .NET, across JavaScript, but like nowadays, or like even excuse me, like looking back a few months, like what piece of technology that you see like excites you the most?
I'll give you two. The first piece from a professional perspective, being the UI UX customer success guy, especially for large financial verticals, is Microsoft Blazor. And the reason I say that specifically is a lot of my clients have for a long time developed modern web applications with JavaScript, be it Angular, be it React, even some Vue here in the States. I know it's more popular over in APJ. But a lot of these, especially the large banks that we all know and work with, are just so invested in .NET architecture, the Microsoft world, Azure DevOps, that their preference is always to try to stay in it. Obviously, they didn't feel a modern approach to web on the true front end with Microsoft until Blazor. So not only seeing the excitement around Blazor, but seeing a migration of some of my clients that had, I don't want to use the term reluctantly, but had picked up Angular or React, with it not being their first choice. Would have loved to see it stay in a C# world and a Microsoft world, but wanted to start developing spas and things like that, that are now quickly saying, I want to go back to C# and I want Blazor, and have been for some time. So from a professional standpoint, that's what excites me the most, just because it continues to open up conversations, opportunities, and also for folks that had stayed away from an Angular or a Blazor, and had continued in, say, classic web forms approach. Now it presents modernization opportunities for them where they're more comfortable.
No, that's very true. Blazor is amazing, and like a lot of shops, like you said, like they have traditionally always done .NET, and you had to go to a JavaScript spa because you just didn't have anything. And with Blazor now, you can do front and back with .NET, and we are seeing like huge upticks in how many enterprises want to do Blazor. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But you said like you were going to give me two.
Yep, from a personal perspective, and this is professional too. We, like we talked about earlier, have some work in it, but we're, as you know, kind of in a beta labs space. But in general, virtual reality, I love. So I have two Oculus sitting behind me, a 1 and a 2.
Nice.
I actually got involved very early on in our own AR VR strategy. It's pivoted sometimes since, but got involved and that really kind of set me off. I was already interested in it, looking into it, and then seeing what we were kind of working on in that space. I got involved there and started helping to put some demos together. And from there, I was in on AR VR. I use it for gaming. I use it for some, in the pandemic, it's been great for some friendly interaction. I've actually, for anybody that has an Oculus and knows a big screen, I've watched some football games with some friends on big screen and things like that, where you can kind of sit in a room together. A little awkward sitting there with your headset on talking to it. Hopefully nobody was watching me, but it was nice during the football season when I couldn't see anybody to have that camaraderie. And then even beyond that, I do a lot of my workouts via Oculus. I box.
Oh, really?
There's a couple great boxing games, but when I say games, they are full body. Some are more gamey. One that I play, it's called Thrill of the Fight, but it is very much stripped down. You're in a bare gym. You have an AI component, and you have to move and you have to work. And I keep my Apple Watch on, and I burn my calories.
Nice.
So I think the applications for AR VR, especially the VR side, are just so unlimited. Yeah. That I'm very keen and interested, both professionally and then obviously very much personally, having two devices on my own.
Yeah. So like when you do that, you have to have the space to move around, right? Because otherwise you end up with those like funny videos of people falling over things.
Yes, you need the space, that's for sure. Especially, there's certainly some things that you can do just like watching TV without the space. And some games, there are some tight quartered games, but if you're going to do some of the more active things like the boxing, you definitely need space. And I can't lie, I've come close to losing a TV once before.
Oh boy. And,
I
yeah, you're right. So, like on the flip side of this, like enterprises are seeing some very interesting applications in VR, like when it comes to like safety regulations,
Yep.
doing things that are not always possible to do in person. So yeah, I mean there are lots and lots of applications.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think for VR, the time, not that there's ever a good time for a pandemic, of course, but the timing of the pandemic really lined up with sort of the takeoff and the uh, buzz around VR that really struck well because there's so many things that you started to be able to do that you couldn't do, whether it's trainings and
yeah,
things in the office. But then to further that, to your point, I think it just brought up the notion of, hey, in training situations that are dangerous or are uh, for whatever reason iffy to do that might cause some trouble or some problems, why
yeah,
don't we do those virtually? Why don't we work virtually with some of our in training doctors and things like that,
yeah.
um, in factory settings when you're training to drive a
Hmm.
forklift? So
Yeah,
at some point it's just a helpful safety measure for
it
people that are
is.
trying to learn certain skills.
It is, yeah. And I mean, despite the progress made, I think, I mean, we are still at very early days in VR. Like things are evolving, things are getting smaller and more easier to put on and do stuff with. So yeah, who knows
as a
what the next
as
five
a
years
big
will say.
sports fan, there is currently a sort of a debate in the baseball world. There is a
Mhm.
hitter that is actively using VR in the batting cages to work on his timing, work on his swing. And it's a big debate because a lot of, and for sports people, baseball is known as the traditionalist sport. They don't want things to
Mhm.
change. They like things the way it was. But there are a lot of folks that say, you know, and probably folks that haven't used VR before, but saying, it's not real. There's no way you can get your timing right. What they're trying to do actually is see, they're using actual film of the pitchers they're facing, and seeing how their ball spins and how it moves and how it
Mhm.
changes. And a lot of the traditionalists say there's no way that's one to one with the real thing. There's nothing like getting in the batter's box. But a couple of batters now are saying, no, 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 it is. I'm not
Yeah,
working on my actual swing, but I'm seeing how that pitcher is pitching live, like I'm standing in the box, see how the ball
yeah,
spins. So it's already starting to come into the sports world.
yeah, yeah. So speaking of gadgets, like I did not know you were as hardcore of a gamer. Like you have a gaming rig back there,
I
and you have
do.
Oculuses. What's your like favorite tech gadget?
So, I won't say my gaming PC because obviously I think that's a little bit of a cop out because it can do anything and everything from gaming to streaming
Hmm.
to surfing. So that gives me everything. But I do love that, and I do, that was actually the first. Even being a little bit of a nerd, that was the first PC I built myself. So I am
Nice.
proud of that one. But in terms of gadgets, I'd probably say. Uh, I'm a little torn. I love my Oculus right now because of somewhat the novelty of it. I've been using one for a while. I had the one before and was using it, but it's still a little fresh to me, and it always seems like I can
Cool.
find something new to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I have the one. I haven't gotten onto the two.
I I thought about staying on the one, to be honest, but I had a lot of friends pick up the two, and they were starting to play some games specifically, actually, that were better
Hmm.
optimized for the two. So I decided to pick it up. Uh,
Yeah.
my other gadget of choice, and this hasn't been as useful of recent. It's as a typical traveler. I love it when I travel. I'm not a Mac guy. I have an iPhone, and that is the extent of my Apple products. Um, but from a convenience standpoint, my Microsoft Surface I also love.
Hmm.
As somebody that travels enough, it's just so convenient on a plane, moving anything. It's got all the power I need for a movable
Sure.
PC. And then the other thing I love is the tablet aspect of it. Again, as
Yeah.
a
You
big
can.
sports person, if I'm playing a game or something, I might have the Red Sox just on my tablet on the desk with the keyboard attached.
Sure.
So just
Yeah. Yeah.
the multifacetedness of it, I love.
Yeah. No, very, very true. Very true. Yeah, and what was I going to say? On the VR front, so our kid is 5, and I'm waiting to introduce him. It's just a little too early. Like I feel like I'm going to confuse his brain.
Yeah.
So I'll give him like maybe 1 or 2 more years before I get him going. Yeah.
I'd also probably be remiss if I didn't mention loving my PlayStation 5, since I know how difficult they are to get right now. So that has to be a tech
Nice.
gadget of choice right now, because I know if I wanted to get one and didn't get one when I was lucky enough, I wouldn't right now. Hopefully, microchips start picking up production soon for
Yeah.
a lot of the other
Yeah.
people in the world that are looking for items.
Yeah. Speaking of your one Apple device, iPhone, I just noticed like today is the day you can start pre-ordering the pastel, like the beautiful mauve or lavender iPhone
I
now.
did see the lavender. That was
It's nice. It's
interesting.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I actually saw
Yeah.
you tweeted it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's nice that you have so much of choice now. But every Apple event is like your wallet just cries that no, you're craving for another thing now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm over the color only because I've gotten to the point now where my phone doesn't come out of my case enough for me to see the color in the back. So at one point I found it, a novelty, but now it's just I don't see it. So if I take that thing out, I'm afraid I break it right away. So
I hear you. All right, so you're busy with work all the time, but whenever you do get some downtime, what do you do for for fun? Like you're obviously a gamer, but anything else? Like, what's your ideal like work-life balance like?
So that's actually why you see a rig behind me. I do try and separate work-life balance a bit. A lot of my life balance is also very technical, be it gaming, be it while I obviously have a TV behind me. If I'm doing some personal work or some gaming, I do stream, whatever sports game I'm watching. So sports is a huge thing for me. Um, I am a massive New England sports fan and go to, when not in a pandemic, as many games as possible. And I actually have season tickets to the Celtics, so that's a huge part of my work-life balance.
Nice.
Going to as many games as possible. And then on the flip side, I consider myself an athlete as well. I played all these sports, but more than anything, I am a European football player, a soccer player.
Oh, nice.
So I try to play as much as possible. Right now, playing twice a week. Actually, little plug, in one of our recreational leagues up here in Boston, Progress actually has a corporate team, FC Progress, that we play with. So there's some of us there that play. So that's the other part of my work-life balance. I'm not a great workout to workout guy. I can't lie, so I need to get it in form of competition or play. So I try to get out on the pitch as much as I can.
Yeah, and live sports, live music, like that's just something everyone's just missing out on. Hopefully,
Live music, I didn't even think to mention because it's been so long.
Yeah,
I am an avid concert goer for sure when I can be.
I think we are hopefully crawling out of this thing slowly. So fingers crossed. We'll see. But I like the way like you have it set up as well. Like and I mean again, the pandemic kind of taught us all to kind of upgrade our game. Like I see people with like massive desks and like beautiful setups for their work and gaming all together. And I hesitate. Like I don't want to be in this chair like all day long, even when I'm just relaxing, right? So I like the separation.
That was the big thing for me. Obviously, I'm in the same room here, but I think you nailed it. It was just there was a period where I didn't have the separation, and for most of the day, I'm still looking at the same four walls, but two different walls are better than the same one. So it's kind of that. I don't need to separate to do my job and get work done. I'm a very driven person, but it was just it almost at this point now feels like I'm in two different spots throughout the day at least.
Yeah. Cool. Are you a foodie? Any favorite cuisine?
I'm not a huge foodie, but I do have my favorites. I mean, nothing will ever be better to me than a really good steak. I am a steak first guy. If we go anywhere, it is my first look is what's on the menu for steaks. I'm not a steak snob. I will eat almost any steak, and then I also from a historical standpoint and a heritage standpoint, I have two main blood tracks in me. One is Portuguese and one is Italian. And being that I grew up on Portuguese and Italian food, so those are two. My grandmother that actually lived with me for most of my life was an Italian immigrant, so like a jarred sauce never came into our house, everything from scratch. So I certainly, my heartburn doesn't like it, but I certainly have an affinity to Italian foods and especially anything with some red sauce as well.
Nice. And do you cook?
I do. I'm not the best cook, but I do try and cook. I can't say I'm that exotic when I cook. It's pretty standard, but I try my best to cook and keep it, somewhat in-house, and I'll use the term quasi healthy.
Yeah, I think with the pandemic, all of us have like cooked more than what you have ever done, and you start out with a lot of passion, like, oh, we can. There's just so much we can cook up, and then eventually you run out of a little bit of steam, and like, another day, another dinner to cook.
Yeah, for me during the pandemic, it's been coffee actually. So I'm a big coffee drinker, but not that I
Nice.
didn't know how to make coffee, but it was just while I was on the go or I was going to work. It was Starbucks, it was Dunkin's, it was whatever I could get my hands on. And then in the pandemic, myself and one of my roommates who actually works for Progress, works on the Sitefinity side, Peter, we spent a couple $100s on a coffee grinder and some new coffee
Nice.
making equipment. And now, sometimes we do our own cold brew. We always have a cup of coffee in the morning. So getting, let's say, artisanal with my in-house coffee creation has been definitely one of the games I've stepped up during the pandemic.
Yeah. I wish I had that much of a liking. Like, I mean, I'll do coffee just to kind of kickstart my day. But then they're the real coffee snobs, and our good friend like Ed Sharpner, who's on stream a lot here. He's got like a real massive like a machine that's like $1,000 probably.
Yep.
That's just gonna make all kinds of stuff. But yeah, anything you pick, like you can go really down that spiral and kind of invest and learn.
We almost went that way. We had some conversations and we scaled back on what we ended up buying for coffee equipment, saying we don't need to go that far, but we definitely beforehand on the weekends it was a Keurig in-house, which nothing wrong with a Keurig, but once you start brewing some coffee outside of that, you realize that there's definitely a strength difference and a taste difference.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this might be a trick question, but if you had $1 million right now, what would you do?
That's a really tough question for me here in Boston, because my inclination is I would buy a property, but I don't know if I'd have enough here in Boston with $1 million even for a small property.
Boston's expensive.
It is. To be honest, I honestly think, and not to be too sentimental or sappy, but I would buy my mother a house, and I'd have leftover from that. My mom lives here in Massachusetts too, but lives a little further south in a more reasonably priced area, I'd say. So I feel confident I could get her a very nice house with that and still have some vacation money and things like that.
Absolutely.
So I think property is always a great investment. And personally myself, while I also think property as an investment is great, I am of the notion of my main goal in life. I'd like to amass as much as I can of things that I'm interested in, but my main goal is always to be as close to debt-free as possible. So the thought of just buying a house and not having a mortgage, or my mom not having a mortgage, would be nice to me. So that would be my first thought instantly when I receive that money. And then again, after I bought it, I probably, Corona makes it tough, but my next thought with whatever was left over is, where's the most, crazy place I want to travel that I've never wanted to spend the money on? That would be a big thing for me.
Yeah, and travel can be expensive, but it also like opens your mind, opens your eyes to so many different things.
So worth it. So worth it.
Yeah. Good. All right. So, I mean, we are all kind of have lived in this pandemic mode for like a year and a half now. Like looking ahead at the next maybe 6 months or a year, what are you finding inspiration from? What are some things you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to hopefully getting back out in the world a bit. I think everybody is, of course. For me personally, I actually, for the first time in a long time, have some travel scheduled. I wasn't keen to travel yet, but I have some reasons. I have a very good friend getting married out of country, so I say I need to go to that like it's somebody's got to pull my arm for me to go to Aruba, from Boston in the cold. But it is, a little earlier than I'd like to travel, mainly for other people. I am conscious of other people. But that's giving me, a ton of excitement and inspiration to just keep plugging and get there. And as a big traveler, my first time back out of Massachusetts, we've been places, Sam, I'm a big traveler. I haven't left the state in over a year and a half, which
same here.
Most people haven't. So I thank most people for not doing that, but it's a big change for me. For some people, it's a lot of the same that they've been used to. For me, it's a big change. So it's there's always the thought of, do I go rent a house in New Hampshire here in Boston, just me and my roommates for a weekend, just to get out and see a different scenery. So I'm excited and hopeful to get some different views of life and see some different people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we like the wife and I, we are fully vaccinated at this point, but the kids are not going to be until like later this year or early. So we can't like throw caution to the wind, and we have to do our due diligence. But like all of us are just wanting to get out a little bit. So yeah, we are hoping we can get out in summer. Get down south somewhere, and just looking forward to just getting a move back on. But you know what, like this is interesting, like for those of us who travel a lot, like you, like me, like we used to be just in a different mode when things were normal, and now like there's a little bit of trepidation, like I really need to pack and to think through what I'm doing. So
for somebody that travels so much, I'm thinking about this wedding coming up, and I'm like, do I remember how to travel? It's almost like it's like riding a bike, but that time you first get back on the bike after you haven't for a while, you're like, I do remember this, right?
And part of you like feels like and again, we have been in this mode for so long, like everything that I have is right here at home. So there's also that, but I'm sure once we get out, we'll get back in the groove of things.
As a people person, you just made a great point. I have a little disappointment, I guess, and surprise with how comfortable I've become being at home.
In a way, like we are connecting quite well with people, like some folks that we have not had a chance to connect, like, and I'll give you an example, like for folks who speak at little user groups or meetups, like we have gotten folks from all over the world to come and join us, right? And that's not something we have ever been able to do because it's regional. We always meet in person. So in a way, we are connecting, but again, this is not normal. So maybe even if after we come out of this pandemic, we learned a few things along the road, right? We have learned to do this better.
Yeah, one thing I can say the pandemic's definitely helped me learn is just how to connect better with colleagues that I don't get to see in person as much. We obviously here have a lot of those at Progress being so widespread, and myself and you working so closely with so many folks in Bulgaria. I've definitely got better at staying interconnected with people I don't get to see personally so much throughout this.
Yeah, well said. All right, Joe, I know you're a super busy man, but thank you for taking the time to just come and hang out with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a great time and great chat.
We have been missing out on some of these, so always fun to chat with you. And I want to thank you for all that you do, because you are amazing. Anytime we know we are getting somebody in your hands, we know they're in good hands.
Well, I want to thank you for all you do, because I couldn't do what I do without you and your team. So it's always a team effort over here.
Absolutely. All right, folks, in the chat room, thanks for hanging out with us on this Friday morning. I think my good friend Alyssa should be on later this afternoon for UI Fridays. She does UI and CSS fun stuff on Friday afternoons. But thanks for hanging out with us, and hopefully you stay healthy, you stay productive, and try to do the best you can. Hopefully you have a great weekend. Same goes with you, Joe. And we shall see you on the next stream. All right. Thanks, folks. And that's it from us. It's me and Joe signing out. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.